Okay, we will begin now. We're here at the very end of Perek Gimel, Malchus Koila. In the very end over here, he has a long, I guess you could call it footnote, where he discusses something that's a little bit off topic. It's not necessarily related to Shabbos, but it's related to the idea of Malchus, and Malchus specifically with regards to Malchus Beis David and Malchus Beis Yosef. Right? We have Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. And what is this? What's going on over here? So he's not going to explain everything. He's just going to explain how this concept of Malchus is applied to Mashiach, to the Malchus Beis David and to the Malchus Beis Yosef. Up until now, we've been discussing Malchus with regards to Hashem. But obviously Hashem has a leader of Klal Yisrael in this world as well. We know Moshe Rabbeinu had a din like a melech. And of course, the Nisim, the Shoiftim, and of course, Shaul HaMelech, the first official king, and there are different dinim if you have a king, and of course, David and Shlomo, and the entire line of Malchus Beis David, and even in Golus, there were the Reish Galusa and the Nisim. There is a very big inyan of that the leader of Klal Yisrael, to a certain degree, has a din Malchus. And in the Hasidic world, it's mamish like this, where the Melech, maybe not every single Hasidus, but there are many Hasiduses where the Rebbe is like mamish like a Melech. Mamish like a Melech. You see, you go into his house, you see what royalty is, right? Such a mufur, different place, chairs, tables, the kalim that they use. There's an idea of Malchus over here. So Malchus comes, we started to discuss this, the Malchus is, you're the one who's reflecting Hashem. We brought this already before, that we discussed this with regards to Kiddush Levana. There were a number of things that were like the Levana, where the Levana reflects the light of the sun. So too, it's supposed to be the Melech in Klal Yisrael is supposed to be reflecting the Kodesh Baruch Hu. He's the one who's leading Klal Yisrael to do Avodas Hashem. And because of that, he has to reflect the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So here, this is more as a explanation, or a mini explanation, I should say, of what is it, the Malchus of Yosef and the Malchus of David. Just on time. We're here on Daf Chof Tes, and this on the footnote discussing the Malchus, not the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu right now, but the Malchus of Malchus Beis David, Malchus Yosef. So right here in the beginning, we just reviews. Yotzei shebe Malchus yesh shnei inyonim. Ma shekvoidu shel HaMelech mizgala al yedei ha'am. The first is that the kavod of the Melech comes through the nation. The nation represents the Malchus, shows the kavod of the Melech. And the second is the opposite. Mam is gala kavod ha'am umit ale shemam al yedei hamelech. The Melech raises the nation. The nation raises the king, because you can't. A king without a nation is not a king. He's a nobody. He's a nothing. He needs to have a nation. It's the nation that makes him the king, but it's the king that makes the nation. V'zeu keter malchus. Keter ze hadgalus hamelech u'malchus hainu mailas ha'am. Keter is that the king is higher than everybody else. Like we said, the keter, the crown, is above everyone else. And the malchus itself, the kingdom, is the people, the nation. Shemit'ala al yedei ha-malchus. So he goes on to explain here, how does Malchus work in the rest of the world? How does this Malchus work? So, yes, it's true that we make a bracha. There is a bracha that you make when you see a real melech. I don't know if nowadays there would be anybody in the world that could fall under this category. Maybe Putin could fall under this category, because there are certain rules that you have to have in order to be a melech like this. Like, you have to be able to put people to death at a whim. And certainly in Western democracies, you can't really do that, whereas in some Eastern countries, maybe you can. So certain places, maybe there's still dinim of a melech where you would mamish make a bracha on seeing such a melech, somebody who has that strength. But essentially, a king is just like a human being, like everybody else. There's nothing essential about him that makes him different than anybody else. What the king does and what makes him special is that he uses his Malchus in this world to raise the nation, like we discussed before, to make them into a complete entity. You are now a citizen of this country. And I remember seeing in some articles that there are like these places where people took a little island and they made a whole country out of it. And nobody who lives on the island except for this one guy. So, like, what kind of country are you? Like, what's going on over here? You're an island off the coast of England, and the whole island is probably the size of this base medrash, and you decide you're making a whole country out of it. So most countries don't acknowledge that at all. It's meaningless. You know, you can do whatever you want. You can make your own currency. You can have your own foreign affairs committee. You and yourself and the guy sitting next to you, right? What is that? If you don't have a nation, you don't have a people. You don't have anything. What are you a melech over? The fish that are around you? What exactly are you? Even that you're not a melech over. So really, it's the king. It becomes the king because he has a nation. But the king himself is not necessarily bigger or greater, essentially, in their essence, than any other person. They don't have a greater. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu did. Moshe Rabbeinu was on a certain madrega above everybody else. Lo kam k'Moshe. Nobody will ever be like Moshe Rabbeinu in the views. Nobody will ever will come to that level. Kabosa Torah b'nei Shemayim. Moshe Rabbeinu's face shown. Maybe he was on a completely different level than everybody else. But even he was a Yilud Isha. He was a human being. The king certainly now, or even in the past 1,000 years, what were they? Was there something special about them? Essentially, that made them bigger than everybody else? No. Therefore, their whole tachlis is only to raise the nation. It's not that the nation raises them to make them great, because essentially they are not great. They're just another human being. Maybe they're a little bit stronger. Maybe they're a little bit more persuasive. Maybe they can threaten better. Maybe they're scarier. You know, they have certain character traits which makes them good leaders, or make them scary leaders that force people into listening to them. But does that change who they are in essence? By Klal Yisrael, we have a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Kodesh Baruch Hu is the Melech, and that Melech is above everyone else. He's above everything. So he is raised. We help raise his name. When we reflect him in this world, we are raising his name, and he is raising us. And very interesting. In the next page, he brings, this could be why there were a number of kings throughout history who actually wanted to make themselves into gods. We know Paro. Paro thought of himself as a god. The question is, why did Paro think of himself as a god? There's Midrashim talking about why would each one of these people who made themselves out into gods, what pushed them for it? So here, he explains that the idea, the second idea that the king not only raises the nation, but the nation be raising the king, that the king should be above everybody else, essentially above everybody else, is what they wanted. They wanted to be above everybody else. In each one of these situations, they had a reason to believe it. One of them is Hiram. Hiram helped build the base of Mikdash, and he was zocheh to live for 1,000 years. And he made himself out into a god, because you live that long, you start to think you're a god. One of the other ones is not brought over here, but it's brought down in the Navi that there was a certain king of Yehuda who also made himself Yoash. Yoash also made himself out into a god. He was even convinced by his servants, some of his close servants who were trying to get in his good graces, that he was a god. Why? Because he survived as a child, as a little baby. He survived for 7 years. He lived in the Kodesh Kodashim. He lived in the Kodesh Kodashim from the time he was a baby until he was 7 years old. Why? How did that happen? Just a little bit of Navi. Yoash, as a baby, was saved when the mother of the previous king decided she wanted to be queen and basically killed everybody from the family. And this one little baby who was left was hidden away, and Yoyada Kohen Gadol hid the baby in the Kodesh Kodashim. In the Kodesh Kodashim, there are two levels. There's an upper level and a lower level. They have the same level of Kedusha. They both have a Kedusha of Kodesh Kodashim, but there's nothing in the upstairs area. In the downstairs area, they had the Aron Abris, when the Kohen Gadol went in there once a year. But on the upper level, which was directly above the Kodesh Kodashim, has the same level of Kedusha. Nobody can go in there. Yoyada Kohen hid Yoash for 7 years. And afterwards he came out and he was a good king. They killed this lady who had taken over. What? Atalia, right? And he became king, and he was a good king until Yehoiada Kohen died. And then his servants started to convince him that he was some kind of god. Like, how could anybody survive in the Kodesh Kodashim even for a second? And you survived for 7 years. How could it be? Until the point where he listened to them and they started doing bad things. Oh, exactly. And this is a famous story that in the end, Zechariah Hanavi came to give Musar to Yoash and his followers for doing Avodah Zarah and all these bad things, and he gave it in the Beis Hamikdash, on Yom Kippur.
One copy.
And they killed him. They killed Zechariah Hanavi. Was an ironic turn of events. Was Zechariah's father was Yoyada Kohen. His father, Zechariah's father, saved Yoash, and Yoash killed Yehoiada's son in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Kippur on Shabbos, and that blood stayed there until Nebuzadran, as the Gemara explains in the Gemara in Gittin, until Nebuzadran came to destroy the first Beis Hamikdash, and he couldn't understand what this blood was, because the blood kept boiling. It wouldn't dry up until Nebuzadran slaughtered tens of thousands of people on it, until he said, Zechariah, I'm going to kill all of them if you're not appeased. And that's the point that it stopped. But here you see, Yoash thought he was a god. Nebuchadnezzar also thought that. Paro, Rav asked the other week, why didn't Paro think he was a god? So I had a pshat. I didn't get a chance to say when the Rav spoke. But why did Paro think he was a god? I believe. What was the main god of Mitzrayim? The Nile, the Yaor, right? Because that's what gave life. Why did Paro think he said, I created the Yaor? Right? That's what he said. I'm the real God. I'm the one who created the Nile. What was his proof? Very interesting. Oh, very good. I didn't see if this is a pshat, but I think this is the pshat. The pshat is that Yaakov Avinu, when he came, he gave Paro a bracha. And the bracha was, when you go up to the Nile will raise up. All of Mitzrayim gets its nutrients when the Nile overflows, and it waters all the land around it, and then you can grow crops. That's how they lived. If the Nile didn't rise, then there would be a famine, which is what happened during the times of the famine. So when Paro, after this bracha that Yaakov Avinu gave him, would go to the Nile, and it would raise up, and every time he went, it would raise up. So essentially, Paro is the one who's in control of it. It's not the Nile. The Nile is only under Paro. Well, hey, Paro thinks of himself. If the Nile's a god and I'm in control of the Nile, so I must be the biggest god. All of a sudden, everybody thinks that they're so great. They're so great. So what happens? Even he brings the Kesar HaRoimi. The Midrash brings that there was a certain Caesar, I don't remember which one on the moment, that said, I want you guys to make me into a god. And they're like, we can't do that. What do you mean I'm going to kill you all unless you make me into a god? And everybody said no to him, and he was very upset. So he went to his wife, and she said, why are you upset? He said, nobody's going to make me into a god. They're not making me into a god. So she said, there's no problem becoming a god. No problem. Yeah? Yeah, I can make you into a god. Sure, how do I do it? Okay, the first thing you got to do is you got to give back your soul to the real God, because you can't be a god and have his stuff. So first thing you got to do is give your soul back to him, and then you can become your own god. It's like, I can't do that, then I'd be dead. So he said, you can't even give him back what's his, so how do you expect to be bigger than him? Like, what? Doesn't make any sense. But that's the idea. They want to be elevated. It's not just enough to be the leader of the nation. You want to be above the nation. Because that's the essence of what Malchus is, but it only exists by Hashem. It only exists by Hashem. So moving on now, like we saw, these two things very much are interlinked. The king needs the nation, and the nation needs the king. The nation needs this leader. It's through the nation that when people can see the king. If you have a small, little, nothing nation, then the king is awesome, not very chashuv. A great nation, a huge nation, then the king is very chashuv. So when it comes to the Malchus of David and the Malchus of Yosef, I'm here in the middle of Daf Lamed. The two kings need each other. Malchus Yisrael, dahainu Malchus Yosef, Malchus Yehuda obeys David. We know that there are two parts of the Malchus of Klal Yisrael. Hashvatim danu at Yosef lemisa mipnei shechashvu lemoirum b'Malchus beis David. So Rav Pinkus learns, he doesn't bring the sources, but he says that the reason why the Shvatim were Dan Yosef for Misa because he was a married b'Malchus. He thinks he's going to be the king.
And I hope that.
Yeah.
From him came your home word most of David.
Oh.
And in Hagi got them. The boy came over by him and they said, my not only back with them. But Oviva girl. The open tap the Oviva girl and they go out from Bona Lion. Lion. It was two with my name.
Very nice, and very nice putting away the pieces together. The Maisa, you see that they were somewhat right. They were somewhat true. Yosef did become king, and his descendants also did become kings. So that's why they donned him that he's Chayim Misa, he's a Morid b'Malchus. Aber be'emes gam Malchus Yosef, Mashiach ben Yosef. We need to have Malchus based Yosef also. We need a Mashiach ben Yosef. Kedei la'achin et kisei David. There are going to be stages. You need a Malchus based Yosef to lead to a Malchus based David. And he brings a pasuk over here that from the pasuk in Yechezkel, I believe we read this Haftorah a few weeks ago. I believe it was in Parshas either Miketz or Vayigash. I think it was in Parshas Vayigash. Yechezkel, Lamed Zayin. Yes, we read it in Parshas Vayigash. You know it by heart? Kach lacha et echad v'ksav alav liYehuda lebnei Yisrael chaveiro. It's the very beginning, I think, of it. V'lakach et echad v'ksav alav Yosef et Ephraim v'chol beYisrael chaveiro. You should take a piece of wood and you write on it Yehuda, and another piece of wood and write on it Ephraim. Ephraim represents Yosef, obviously. V'kayev or some echad, bring them together. Echad el echad. Lech le'etz echad lechad lechad le'etz echad. They should be like one. Ve'yu la'achodim yadecha. They should be united in your hand. Shemuchrachim sheyitkayim shneim ke'echad. It has to be. We need them both together. V'shnei amudim is skipping a line. V'shnei amudim malchus is Yosef v'Yehuda. We need both of them. Why do we need both of them? So in the next paragraph, he starts to tell you why do we need Malchus Yosef. Malchus Yosef hila alos keren Yisrael al yedei Malchus HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'soichem. Malchus Yosef is to raise the people. Understand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is amongst you. You have to be better. We have to raise ourselves because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is amongst us. V'lechein ikar Malchus Yosef has tzidkoso masha omad b'nisyonos. That's what the great mile of Yosef is, that his sitkus, how he always did the right thing, even when it was incredibly difficult. The tzidkus, the righteousness of Yosef That represents what Klal Yisrael has to keep themselves up. Even when we're in the most depraved, disgusting places. Even when we're in Golis and we're amongst the Goyim who do all the worst, terrible things, we still hold on. That koyach comes from Yosef. Hatzitkus azu hi mikoyach malchus shamayim shebesoicham. Where does this power come from? It comes from that we have the malchus shamayim in us. Dahainu Torah mitzvahs. She's a malet akeren Yisrael yod mi mamlechas kohanim v'goy kadosh. It raises us. We are different. We are above every other nation. Al shem ze nikroim Yisrael miloshon shrara v'otzoma. That we are like the sarim, the officers, the kohanim. We are above everybody else. What brings it? Because we have the Torah mitzvahs. That's why we're above everyone else. That is the tzidkus that's represented by Yosef. But the next step, like we said before, Yosef is the Hakdama, and it brings to Malchus Beis David. And that Malchus Beis David is to bring the Shechina into the world. First, we have to raise ourselves up. And then we can bring Hashem into the world. That's why it says about Binyamin, who is the host of the Shechina, because the Beis HaMikdash, and specifically the Mizbeach, and the Beis HaMikdash, the building of the Beis HaMikdash itself, the Kodesh Kodashim was in the Chelek of Binyamin. Hayatomin mechubar liYehuda, shekein al yidei Yehuda mizgalas Shechina, because it's through Yehuda that the Shechina comes out. The Yesod of Malchus Beis David, comes from Yehuda. Yehuda, which we know means Hoidah. That we're moided to the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're moided to all the good things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything Hashem does for us. We know that we are very low or nothing, and we sing praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we're bottled to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's when we can be a kli for the Gilui Shechina. This comes out, we see this idea from when David HaMelech brought the Aron to Yerushalayim. And he danced with abandon. And Michal, his wife, maybe even his main wife, the daughter of Shaul, said, this is how you act in front of the shvachos of the nation. In front of the lowliest people, you, the king, who's supposed to be so high, you act in such a low way. And David said to her, it's in front of Hashem. In front of Hashem? What do you mean, in front of Hashem? I'm nothing in front of Hashem. If it means bring more kavod to Hashem, and it means bring more praise to Hashem, I do even more. Because that's what I am. I'm here just to bring the Gilui Shechina. I'm just here to bring the Shechina into the world. I'm supposed to be the reflection of that Shechina. We as a nation have to be prepared. We have to work on our avodas Hashem. We have to work on our midas tovos, on our mitzvahs, and on our Torah, in order to raise ourselves up so that we could properly reflect Hashem. But Lamaisa, how do we bring Hashem? We bring ourselves by lowering ourselves in the name of Hashem. In front of Hashem, we lower ourselves. Not that we're doing the mitzvahs for schar. There is a madrega, the person who does mitzvahs for schar. It's not the highest madrega. When a person does his mitzvah avodas Hashem, he does it for himself, though it's limiting. When he's doing it for the Gilui Shechina, so then there's no limit. Because it's not totally on me, it's totally on Hashem. I'm only doing for Hashem. That's what David HaMelech, that's what the Malchus Beis David reflects. That's what it shows. The Ma'aseh, David HaMelech was also a tzaddik. It's not that David HaMelech wasn't a tzaddik, but that wasn't his mahus. His mahus was to be mevatel himself completely to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the anava that makes him into a kli kibul, that he can now hold the Shechina. He can bring the Shechina into the world. And that's really what the whole purpose of Am Yisrael and the leader of the Jewish people is. To bring the Shechina into this world. That's what we discussed. That's what Shabbos is. To bring the Shechina into this world. Which is why we can see the kesher between Malchus and Shabbos. Because that's the whole purpose. Shabbos is to bring the Shekhinah into this world, and that's what Malchus is also, to bring the Shekhinah into this world. But you have to have tzidkus. That's why you need to have both. You need to have the tzidkus of Yosef, and you need to have the hitpatlut, I'm bottle, I'm an honor of David HaMelech. I'm here in the bottom paragraph, on page Lamed Aleph. We'll finish up with the last little bit here. Lachein haya David gadol b'Torah davka. David was a gadol in Torah, not necessarily in tzidkus like Yosef, but in Torah. She'ikra gadolus b'Torah lo ba kifi madreikas hatzadik. The gadolus in Torah is not because of the level of tzidkus you have. Ela b'yegia v'shviras ha'adam b'tvatluto. It's only by breaking yourself. By breaking yourself and totally being mevatel yourself to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, that's how you can have greatness in Torah. K'dichtiv Hashem yitain chachma piv das zvuna. K'moshe HaMelech HaRishon b'Yisrael Moshe Rabbeinu. The first king Moshe Rabbeinu al yidei v'ha'ish Moshe anav ma'oid zocha l'Torah yoter mikol echad. He got the Torah. He accepted the Torah. Why? Because he was mevatel himself completely. There are many, very, very well known, great Gedolim. Our greatest leaders, and they get stuck. I don't know what the pshat is. I don't know what this means. What should I do? They stop and they daven. Because it's not for me. It's only if Hashem gives it to me. I can work and I still won't get it. I have to daven. If I don't have pshat, I don't understand, I'm going to stop and say the Perek Tehillim. Hashem, please open my mind. Help me understand this, because I have to be mevatel myself in order to truly understand Torah. But you still need tzidkus. Ababalit tzidkus shezeh be'emes milas beis Yosef. Without that, lo shaykh is Malchus be'ed David klal. You don't have anything, because we have to be roy. Klal Yisrael has to be roy to reflect. Very good. Once we have the Ner Mitzvah, once we're building ourselves up, then the Torah will make it much, much greater. But we have to start it. We have to do what we can. Like it says, Yitnu li pischon petach shel mechet. Give me a hold. Open yourself up just a teeny little bit. And here they're talking about Shuvah. Open yourself just a little bit, and then I'll give you so much more. Because when we're mevatel ourselves, then Hashem gives it to us. We have to start. We have to start with our tzidkus, which is why we need the Malchus of Yosef. Nimsa ha-Malchus mitchaberes mishneim yachad. So that's what real Malchus that's meant to bring the Shekhinah into the world, which is really what Malchus is. The two of them have to be together. Biratzu b'shov Malchus Yisrael and Malchus David. Hashem Yisbarach mashlim et Yisrael. Hashem makes us whole. And because now Klal Yisrael is whole, now we can do our tachlis of bringing Malchus Shamayim b'tifar, so oid ba'oid, making the Malchus Shamayim greater and greater. When we are whole with our shleimus, then we can be mevatel ourselves completely. This is what's the irony of it. Moshe Rabbeinu is probably the greatest person to ever live. We'll see Mashiach. But the greatest person to ever live understood, I'm a nothing when it comes to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Compared to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Anod Mikol Adam. And that's why he had that schus to bring the Torah into the world, to bring the greatest Shechina, the real Shechina, Ma'amid Har Sinai, which is the yesod of all of Yiddishkeit. Ma'amid Har Sinai, the greatest event to occur in the history of the world. Why? Why through Moshe Rabbeinu? Because Moshe Rabbeinu only wanted to reflect the Kadosh Baruch. So that's really what Malchus is, and that's really in the world. As Hashem b'meher b'yameinu, we will see this true Malchus, the Shechina being reflected by our true leaders. Be'ez Hashem, very, very soon.